In this podcast number 8, I'll be talking to Val Bagnall, Managing Director of Apex Airspace Developments. Val is a vastly experienced property professional, having worked in the market for over 25 years. I think it's fair to say he has an extensive knowledge helping develop collaborative partnerships with both the private and the public sector organisations. What makes Val particularly interesting is that over the last few years, he's focused on airspace development. And it's fair to say that he is a leader in this market now. Val, great to see you today and thank you for joining us.
Good day.
We've all been made aware of the lack of housing in the UK recently, and particularly affordable housing. This, coupled with the lack of space on the ground, there's been a focus on developing upwards or into airspace in inverted commas, particularly in London where the shortage is greatest. Val, you're a leader in this market. You've been doing it for a few years, but what made you begin focusing on airspace development?
Well, I think it's a combination of the various things you've said there. There's a lack of development land in London. There's a major housing need in London, both affordable and in terms of the private sector. And as a small developer in the market, we needed to find a way that we could get into the market and make an impact. Airspace seemed to be one solution which was relatively unexplored before Apex looked at the market. We firstly started off with a research project which detailed that there's the potential of 180,000 homes in London. That gave us a scalable platform to look at actually the size of the market and potentially the value of the market. We then had conversations with a number of people at the Greater London Authority and other local authorities about their needs. And when we looked into it, we saw that airspace could be, if the model was developed correctly, a very viable solution to homelessness and the housing crisis in London.
You've recently been to number 10 yourself, which is a great achievement to support the things you were just saying about combating homelessness as well as the lack of affordable housing. You've got the backing of the Housing Minister and you've recently got the backing of Sadiq Khan. Can you explain how those conversations went and why the government is backing this idea and you in particular?
I think the conversation with Apex as a company has been a very positive one with government, both national and local government in London. And in essence is we've got a solution that fits the problems and the government's agenda on increasing new housing supply. When we discussed our model with the Prime Minister and the Housing Minister, it was very much along not just that we were doing more of the same, it was how we were doing it. Because the essence of the Apex model for airspace is the exclusive use of modular constructed homes. This means that we will respond quickly and by and large twice as quickly as traditional construction and deliver a product which we are confident can deliver affordable, compliant sites in London. As you're probably aware, one of the great difficulties in London hasn't just been about housing supply, but the nature of supply, with most schemes in London not being able to provide the affordable, compliant policy of 35%. We have now had a conversation with the Greater London Authority where we're committing to provide 50% and perhaps higher affordable housing on those sites.
That's great. So just picking up something you've said then, as you say, usually particularly permitted development, but other schemes in the Greater London area, you're looking at 35%, but you're actually going to be delivering 50% affordable housing, which is fantastic. It strikes me that Theresa May will have Brexit on her mind rather than focusing on the housing crisis, although, of course, that's split responsibilities of any Prime Minister. It makes me wonder, given that we've now got public authority backing publicly for airspace. I saw you in BBC and Telegraph News with Sadiq Khan, and he gave you that £10 million loan. Do you think airspace development, because of this public backing, is slightly Brexit proof, in inverted commas?
I don't know about Brexit proof, because no one knows what Brexit means yet, but certainly it's a supply proof in terms of London needs new homes. And irrespective of whatever form Brexit turns out, that supply has to happen because the demands there's concealed demand in homelessness throughout the capital, And with the demographic forecast for London, I think that, yes, some of the sales markets may slow, but supply, and certainly affordable supply, will continue irrespective of what happens with Brexit. And that's the reason why we have stepped up our conversation with the affordable housing sector, both housing associations and local authorities, because we think that's one, certainly, element of new supply which will be rather resilient to whatever the Brexit conversation turns out to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Essentially, whatever happens with Brexit, there'll still be a lack of housing, and this is one solution to it, which the government's backing. So there is a market for this. That's focusing on the public sector. In terms of the private sector, I know through acting for developers that lenders are traditionally reticent to lend on airspace development. Could you just explain to us why traditional private lenders are reluctant and how you see that potentially changing?
I'm not too sure about the bottom line of lenders being wholly reluctant, but certainly it's a new product in a new marketplace with a new set of risks. And I think there's a period of adjustment between the private lending community getting familiar with those risks and getting comfortable with them. Because airspace development indeed in the UK is still a relatively nascent concept. There's no real scale, so lenders really it hasn't been on their radar screen for a long time as of yet. I think the funding that we have got from Homes England gives lenders immediate confidence that there's been a due diligence applied to our methodology and how we're delivering airspace development. Sure. And this is building confidence now in the lending community that here's a market that can grow and that they now want to invest in. And we at Apex are pioneering those discussions on opening the market up for more lenders to come in and make it much more competitive.
Yes, you're right. I see private lenders, once you have one big name on board who almost has a package to provide loans for airspace development, I can see that having a domino effect for other lenders falling into the market and that being a real growth area in lending and in this airspace development.
I think what's important in terms of new lenders as well, what we are developing is in essence a new asset class for investment. And it's a repurposing of existing assets, which is creating and generating new value for lenders as well. Certainly if it's the case, if they are building that they've already invested in and you're adding another 35-40% of value to that asset, and that has really excited lenders about our model and why they want now to step into the investment facilities for us.
I see that being a potentially huge growth area for private lenders, something that's untapped, but particularly with this government backing, I see that being a growth area. Val, another big area of airspace development, so we've talked about public backing, we've talked about private lending, is the planning side of it. Now, for the first time since 2012, the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, having new amendments made to it, which included the insertion of a definition of airspace, which there hasn't been before. And there's even the prospect of PD rights for airspace development. Val, I know that you've been a driving force behind this with the government. Could you just let us know where we are with this and what PDR we'll be looking at?
I think certainly in terms of the National Planning Policy Framework, Apex have been very influential in getting airspace into that conversation now and into the policy framework for government. And that's been a major win, and that's going to start to influence how local authorities up and down the land look at airspace. I think we just go back 3 years ago, if we had Googled airspace development, all we would have got is NASA or Heathrow Airport. So the fact we've got a new cavalry around development is positive. That's helping to frame thinking around planning going forward. In terms of permitted development rights, or PDR, it's an interesting area because permitted development rights has had a very, very mixed media, and indeed are the skating media. So the government are quite rightly looking at it. We understand from conversations that the direction of travel is the same, that permitted development rights will happen and is likely to happen in the autumn of this year, subject to a legislative window for it to happen. I think it'll very much also be dependent upon the politics of the next 6-7 months and what Brexit may or may not do. If we have a change of government I think some of the focus is going to come off permitted development rights. But all I can say from Apex perspective is, whilst we've been trying to influence the policy perspective on permitted development rights, we're trying to look at actually how we can make it a much better form of planning. In essence, what we want out of permitted development rights is certainty and speed. And I think there's something we've got to do as a developer community to make that happen. There's three things that hang out the back of current permitted development rights, which makes it seen as a bad way of development. One is poor design, two is no affordable housing, and three is planning authorities don't get a fee. So we put a proposal to government to say that we're happy to deliver all three. In one, we will design to the London Design Guide template. Two, we will ensure all schemes provide affordable, compliant housing. And three, we're happy to pay a planning fee. So all we want out of permitted development right is speed and certainty.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, and that's why it's so appealing to the government as well. Turning now to the value behind airspace development, I know from seminars we've done together that you've told me you've done research into this, and there's a potential, well, I won't say it, I'll let you say it, the potential figure for what can be unlocked in terms of airspace development in Greater London. Do you want to just talk us about the research you've done on it and how much potential you think there is out there to unlock within Greater London?
Well, the research we commissioned back in 2016 was based on a detailed survey of every rooftop in the Camden area. And that suggested extrapolating and setting aside listed buildings, properties in conservation areas, and building topologies that didn't lend itself to airspace development. It still suggested a sum of around 2,500 plots of a 2-bedroom size at minimum. And that was based on a 1-story extension basis. We then took the learning from that research and recast it across every other London borough and used data sets held by both the Greater London Authority and the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Governments data sets. And that then gave us out a number which is very, very conservative of 180,000 homes possible on London's residential roofs only at a 1-story basis. What we didn't do in that research was include commercial and retail. That could possibly add another 25 to 30% numbers to that 180,000. Yeah. We then took the 180,000 and then we took average property prices per ward per local authority borough in London to come up with a figure of £54 billion, the value of the airspace market. We have shared that data with both the Greater London Authority and the Ministry of Housing, Community and Local Government, and they are quite satisfied about our numbers and our projections for that supply. So we feel really confident that our numbers are really sort of robust indication of what the supply capacity could be and the value of that market in London.
So your numbers and your research have almost been corroborated by the government or local authority figures?
Well, we can't say that, absolutely. And no government's going to endorse research we do. However...
But you've talked it through with them and they're saying that it's not crazy.
Absolutely. We, certainly with our friends and colleagues at the Greater London Authority, we shared that with our planning team and our housing team. It went through quite a lot of scrutiny, and the back end of that sort of exercise was they thought our numbers were proportionate.
Brilliant. Finally, I'm conscious that I've kept you here for a long time already. I know from talking to you, you've secured 150 option agreements around London for Apex, which is a great achievement and shows how much confidence you have in this. What have been the two biggest hurdles that you've faced in securing an option agreement for roof space of a building in London?
I think the biggest issue for any certainly small development company is track record. When you start out and being entrepreneurial as Apex are as an organisation, getting yourself established in a new market with a new product is very, very difficult. And the first thing is about confidence in you as an organisation. So we've spent some in the order of £3.5 million to date. Proofing the concept, getting people to understand the dynamics of what we're talking about, and waking people up to the value of the airspace in London. I think there's that journey of promotion has been a long journey for us. It's been one, but certainly we can map and see the real opportunity we have created in London. Some of the other points we've covered, I think there was certainly a financial reluctance to get involved in the market initially, which we seem to have overcome now through the investment from both Greater London Authority and the Homes England, and also in terms of the backing of the Business Growth Fund, which put 6.25 million into Apex back in mid-2018. So that's helped to create a financial backbone to our conversations with the general public about who we are as an organisation. The second one, which you've also talked about, is a planning one. Understanding how we can influence the planning policy development to make airspace happen, and getting that into both the national and local planning frameworks has been absolutely key to, again, reducing the barriers for delivery of airspace development. I think getting options is one thing, deliverability is key.
Thank you, Val. I mean, I found that fascinating. This is a current and topical area of property market at the moment. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
I've been talking to Val Bagnall, the Managing Director of Apex Airspace Developments, and I am Paul Oliffe, Legal Director at Ashfords Solicitors, who specialises in airspace development along with other development. If you have any questions for Val or myself on this topic or anything related to it, then please leave us some comments below or get in contact with me at p.oliffe@ashfords.co.uk.